Good morning. The YMCA education is free and open to the public. We have a host about 6 to 8 of these a month and a whole bunch of different topics. This program will last about an hour. Try to, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box because we're having some technical stuff going on. And I'll get those to Matt. Otherwise, he'll try to answer what he can at the end of the program today. Thank you for joining us this morning and today. We have Matt Margolis talking to us today about Medicaid, understanding Medicaid and how to protect assets legally. Learn how to strategically protect your assets while applying for Medicaid. Medicaid's coming up right now. We'll be opening up soon. So it's really awesome to hear from Matt today. Welcome, Matt.
Hey everybody, good to see you this morning. Unfortunately, I can't hear anything. I'm not sure what's going on with my computer, but I guess it's better that I can't hear anything than you guys not be able to hear anything. So I appreciate the intro that Pam did, even though I couldn't hear it. Good to be here. Some of you who I talked in the past hear some things today I might repeat, but there's just some things that I find pretty important that I like to bring up in various talks that I give. Just a little bit of background on me. So my name is Matt Margolis, as Pam said. My partner Lauren Weldon and I have had our practice for the last almost 8 years. It'll be 8 years in January. I can't believe it. Our office is in downtown Park Ridge, and we are an estate planning law firm. So we work with folks of all ages and families of all shapes and sizes with their traditional estate planning, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, asset protection, power of attorney documents for 18-year-olds going off to college, all that kind of stuff. And we do it for 18-year-olds all the way up to folks in triple digits that just need some simple estate planning. On the other side of our practice, sort of more what we're going to focus on for today's talk is the elder law side. And on the elder law side, elder law can mean a lot of things. For us in our practice, it really is more so related to Medicaid and helping people apply for Medicaid, and not just apply, but also to protect assets. And that'll be the crux of our conversation today. So that is a little bit about me. And I've got 2 little kids. I'm married. I live in Northbrook. Am I still frozen? Okay. Obviously, we're having some technical difficulties this morning. I apologize. But Pam, please continue to keep me posted if things go wrong. Obviously, I'm not hip to that. So, today's talk to understanding Medicaid and how to protect assets legally. So, we're going to cover a few things, right? So, we're going to talk about sort of the difference, and very, very briefly, the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. A lot of people get this mixed up. I think that they sort of understand the difference. Sure, once we start talking about it, but I think a lot of folks can be a little confused. So we're going to cover Medicaid versus Medicare, and then we're going to really just discuss how to protect assets. If we're going into a nursing home, either if we're going into a nursing home, we're sort of on the doorsteps of a loved one needing to move into a nursing home, or if we are maybe looking to protect our assets in case we go into a nursing home at some point, right? We don't know if we will, we all hope we don't, but if those are the cards we're dealt, and at some point we need to move into a nursing home down the road, how do we get in front of it, and how do we do some protection, now? So first of all, when we look at Medicaid versus Medicare, there is a big difference. Okay, and so when we talk about Medicare is health insurance that you get when you turn 65, right? And so when people turn 65, they get on Medicare. And Medicare is really going to be their health insurance is going to cover, to some extent, right? And I'm not going to go into all the details of exactly what Medicare covers and what it doesn't, and how Medicare supplements work and all that. That's not really my discussion, but in general, look at Medicare as your insurance, right? It's going to cover, all or a part of doctor's visits, procedures in a hospital visits, etc. Okay, Medicare does not cover true long-term care. right? So I think I've got a lot of people that I've met with over the years where they have this idea that Medicare is going to cover them if they move into a nursing home or an assisted living facility. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. Okay. Medicare can step in and cover a fraction of our long-term care costs, but it is a fraction. Okay. And so what Medicare will cover when it comes to any kind of care situation is if I'm in the hospital and I have 3 overnights in a hospital and I'm classified as inpatient status. And just so you know, if I spend a night in the hospital, I may not be considered inpatient or classified as inpatient. I may be classified as under observation. A lot of us think that we're inpatient because we think in our heads, and it makes sense, right? If I'm spending the night there, of course I'm inpatient. Of course I'm not under observation. There's a difference. I can't tell you what it is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to pretend to be one. But there's a difference. I've had clients in the hospital for 7 days. 3 of those days were observation. 4 of those days were inpatient. So what you need to understand, and what I really want you to walk away with is because this piece of information to me is extremely important. Okay. So if I leave a hospital and I've got at least 3 nights of inpatient status, again, it doesn't matter if I was there for 8 days, as long as 3 of those nights or 8 nights, as long as 3 of those nights I was classified as inpatient before I went to a nursing home for rehab. Because typically if we're going to leave a hospital and do any kind of rehab, typically it will be at a nursing home. Okay. So I leave the hospital, I go to a nursing home for rehab. And as long as I have 3 nights of inpatient status in the hospital, Medicare will cover the first 20 days of my rehab stint, 100%. Okay. And just so everybody knows, the daily cost of rehab in a nursing home, in a skilled nursing facility, can be anywhere from $400 to $600 or $700 a day. And typically, you're probably looking at probably closer to $500 to $700 a day. Probably not going to be looking at as low as $400 a day. So if the daily rate for rehab in a nursing home is $500 to $700 a day, the great benefit, right? It's great that Medicare will cover that, because if that was out of pocket, I could be spending $15,000 to $20,000 for 1 month of rehab. Okay. But this is why it's so important to make sure that when you're in the hospital or when a loved one is in the hospital, you are asking the staff and making sure to see how they are being classified. In some cases, they're being classified as under observation, but they should be inpatient. Hospital, I'm not saying the hospital out to get us. The hospital has it's in the hospital's interest to not necessarily just jump to classify everybody as inpatient. The hospital's biggest payer source from an insurance standpoint, this shouldn't come as a shock, is Medicare, right? The hospital's biggest payer source on an annual basis is Medicare. Sure, people have co-pays, but Medicare, think about it when you look at those hospital bills. Right? How much is your insurance or Medicare versus how much you're paying out of pocket, or how much your Medicare supplement is paying out of pocket? So because Medicare is the biggest payer source for that hospital, the hospital doesn't want to put everybody as inpatient status, because that Medicare will then have to cover the rehab, and they don't want Medicare coming back and saying, hey, every single person that comes in, you're putting them as inpatient status and we're having to pay for them, right? And then they start to have issues with Medicare. So again, that's a whole other conversation. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but understand that, again, I'm not saying the hospital's against us. Hospital's not necessarily on your side to classify you or your loved one as inpatient status so that you get your rehab paid for by Medicare. So again, I can't say this enough. Be aware of what that classification is. And if you have a loved one that's under observation and you think it should be inpatient, get an advocate on your side. You can always reach out to me. It's not something that we help with, but I can always put you in touch with like a patient advocate that understands the medical side, and they can look at things and maybe make an argument to the hospital as to why you should be inpatient versus observation. Okay. Because I've had clients come to me where their loved one was in rehab for 45 days and they got a bill for $30,000 from the nursing home. And they were like, what's going on here? right? We thought Medicare covered this. And then we looked at how they were classified at the hospital and before they were discharged to the rehab facility. And they were under observation, right? They didn't have those 3 nights at least of inpatient status. So again, really important, just really important for everybody to be aware of. We haven't had, an issue with that in a while, but doesn't mean that it's not happening. Okay, so I hope that clarifies to some extent the big difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Oh, I want to continue really quick. So while Medicare will cover the first 20 days of rehab at 100% for up to another 80 days, which would be give them a total of 100, but for the 80 days after that, that would bring them to day 100. Medicare covers 80%. And then if somebody has a Medicare supplement, the Medicare supplement will pick up the other 20%. So technically somebody could be in a nursing home for rehab for up to 100 days with 0 out of pocket. Now, I'll throw this out there. You guys all need to look into the plans that you have or that your loved ones have, but a Medicare supplement, a true supplement, will cover the additional 20% for those 80 days. A Medicare Advantage plan works differently, and a Medicare Advantage plan will cover some of those days. We'll pick up the 20% for some of those days, but there's going to be a gap period of about 20 to 21 days where it will not pay for it, and you will be out of pocket for that 20%. Again, Medicare will still pick up the 80%, but you would be out of pocket for that 20%. So listen, it's good to understand your Medicare supplements, your Medicare Advantage plans. A lot of people kind of buy them. I think a lot of people just buy them based on the cost, not really understanding the pros and cons. So, while the Advantage plans tend to be a little bit less expensive, there are some situations like a rehab stint where, somebody could be out of pocket 20% for 20 days. 20% could be, $120 a day for 20 days. I mean, that could be a $2,500, $2,500 for a month, right? Or so, or for those 20 days, sorry. So again, just things to consider. All right, so now let's talk about the asset protection, right? Probably why most of you were interested in attending today. I'm just guessing. So when we look at Medicaid, it's important to understand what types of places in Illinois take Medicaid. All right, there's 2 types of facilities in Illinois that accept Medicaid as far as paying for long-term care. So the one that most of us are familiar with is our nursing homes, right? Most of us are likely more familiar with the idea that, okay, if I or a loved one moves into a nursing home and it's a nursing home that accepts Medicaid, right? Because not every nursing home takes Medicaid. If it's a nursing home that accepts Medicaid, I can move into that nursing home, and at some point, based on my assets, I can apply for Medicaid. Great. Yeah, so there's some nursing homes in Illinois that take Medicaid. Then there's another type of facility in Illinois that accepts Medicaid, and that is called a supportive living facility. Okay, supportive living facility. Every single place in Illinois that is under the umbrella of supportive living takes Medicaid. Every single one. So with nursing homes, some take Medicaid, some don't, right? We need to do our due diligence. If we're moving into a nursing home or considering moving into one or a loved one, we should be asking, do you take Medicaid or not, right? Unless you've got millions and millions of dollars and never need to worry about running out of money, a lot of us will need to ask, do you take Medicaid? Just in case we run out of money, that way we have a so again, while not every nursing home takes Medicaid, every single supportive living facility takes Medicaid. Supportive living facilities, from a care standpoint, are a lot more similar to assisted living. So if you're familiar with assisted living or you've heard of assisted living, assisted living is sort of like that level of care just before nursing, right? So skilled nursing, you help with activities of daily living. With assisted living, you may need help with a few things, but you can still do some things on your own. Okay, well, supportive living would be. So I'm going to go into nursing. I'm not focused on nursing homes. I'm not going to focus so much on supportive living. And the numbers are slightly different, but they're so slightly different, and they're not used as much. I'm going to focus more on nursing homes today, guys. So if I'm moving into a nursing home, and I'm a married individual. Okay. Actually, let's use the example of a single person. I'm a single person moving into a nursing home. I can have $2,000 in my name. Okay, that's $2,000 total of every single thing I have. That's my checking accounts, my savings accounts, my brokerage accounts, my stocks, my bonds, my cash value, my life insurance policies. my IRAs, my 401ks, real estate. Okay? I cannot have more than $2,000 total, not $2,000 per account, $2,000 total. Okay, I can't have more than $2,000. I cannot own a home. If I own a home, let's say I've got less than $2,000, but I have a house, I have to put my house up for sale. Okay, I can still apply for Medicaid and I can still get approved, but Medicaid's going to approve me. They're going to know that I have a house. They're going to want me to sell the house. I'm going to have to show them over time that I'm making an effort to sell it. And eventually when it sells, and now all of a sudden I get this check for $200,000, let's say I'm on Medicaid already, I'm going to basically be temporarily kicked off of Medicaid, and I'm going to have to spend down $200,000. You know, let's just say a nursing home costs $10 a month, which is a pretty good average to use. Just so everybody knows, that's about the average in the general area. Presuming most people are, you know, Glenview, Northbrook, General, North Shore. And so I'm going to have to spend down $10,000 a month on my care until all of a sudden I'm back under 2,000, and I can get back onto Medicaid. Okay. So I can have $2,000 in my total assets. As from an income standpoint, I get to keep $30 a month of my income. Okay, so I get $1,000 from Social Security, or I get $2,500 from Social Security and a pension combined. I can pay for my Medicare supplement or my Medicare Advantage plan. Okay, so I will continue to keep those plans in place, and I want to keep those plans in place. It's not going to cost me anything. Write the check to Blue Cross Blue Shield or Humana, whoever my supplement or advantage plans through. My income comes in, I'm going to write them their check to pay for the supplement or advantage plan. I get to keep a whopping $30 of cash to pay for my monthly haircut, and then the rest of my income goes to the nursing home. Okay, Medicaid picks up the rest of the bill, but the nursing home gets all my income. Now, the only caveat, just so you know, really this is the biggest difference to some extent with supportive living, is if I think I've got a bad internet connection today, Pam, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Gail. I got a hard, I think I've got a bad internet connection today. So the biggest difference is that if I'm in a skilled nursing facility, I get to keep $30 a month of my income. If I'm in a supportive living facility, I get to keep $90 a month of my income. All right, that's really the biggest difference. And then when we look at, there's a look back period. And so when I go to apply for Medicaid, there's a 5-year look back. And what that means is that Medicaid is going to want to see, what did I do with my money over the last 5 years? And really what they're looking for is, did I give any of it away? They don't really care. I mean, they want to see to make sure. They don't really care that I, you know, took a European excursion for $20,000, you know, 3 years ago. They don't care that I bought a $1,000 flat screen TV 9 months ago. They do care if I'm writing checks to my kids or my grandkids. And that could also be in the form of, you know, not just writing my kids or grandkids checks, but if, let's say I'm helping pay for their college, or I'm helping pay for the private school they go to. You know, Medicaid will also take issue if I'm making larger donations to a church or synagogue. You know, I'm getting a call from my daughter's daycare or preschool guys. I need to stop for just 1 second. I'm really sorry. I'm just going to mute myself.
Well, hopefully everyone is can hear better now. It got a little choppy there, but
all good. We're back.
Okay, great. Okay.
Sorry about that. So really what I'm trying to get at is that Medicaid, they will take issue. They at the end of the day, they're going to make a stink, or we should just presume that they might make a stink out of us giving money or using our money. Okay, again, not necessarily giving it directly to our child or grandchild, but again, paying for their school, paying for their horse riding lessons or guitar lessons or ballet classes, or, you know, paying our daughter's divorce attorney because our daughter needs help with that, or giving our son money because he lost his job. All these things. Okay, Medicaid is going to, or we have to at least believe that Medicaid will have a problem with us either giving money away or using money for a third person. Basically, the way that Medicaid puts it in their language is, did I make any transfers for less than fair market value? Okay. Any transfers for less than fair market value. So I'm going to add one more thing in the mix, right? It's not just checks to people directly. It's not just paying for things for somebody, but it's also selling something for less than it's worth, right? I can't sell my car to my son for $5,000 if it's really worth $20,000. I can't sell my property in Wisconsin that's worth $600,000 to my daughter for $50,000. Okay, Medicaid's going to consider the gap between what the fair market value is and what I sold it for to basically be a gift, right? Because in Medicaid's eyes, what they're looking at now is they're saying, all right, well, you got $50,000 that you're gonna have to spend down before you get down to $2,000 to apply, but really you should have had $600,000 given to you for the sale of that property. Okay, so any money that we've given away, and we'll just use the phrase given away. I hope you all understand. I think you should all understand kind of what that means based on what we just discussed or what I just mentioned. Let's just say I gave away, in whatever fashion you want to look at it, $100,000 in the last 5 years. It doesn't matter if it was 4.5 years ago. It doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago. Medicaid doesn't prorate it. Say I gave away $100,000 in the last 5 years, and the nursing home I'm moving into costs $10,000 a month. All right, Medicaid, and let's just say that I'm down to $2,000. So I'm ready to apply. I'm eligible. Medicaid gets my application. They say, Matt, congratulations, you're approved. But we're going to give you a 10-month penalty. You're going to need to figure out a way to pay out of pocket for 10 months before Medicaid kicks in. Why is that? I gave away $100,000. Right, and so they take that 100,000 and they divide it by $10,000 a month, which is the monthly cost of the nursing home I'm moving into. And so in Medicaid's eyes, basically what they're saying is, if you didn't give away that money, you would have been able to pay for the next 10 months, and then you'd be seeking our help to pay for you, right? Then you'd be applying for Medicaid. But you didn't, right? You didn't hold on to that money. You gave it away. So we're going to approve you, but you're not going to be eligible for Medicaid until August of 2023, right? In the next 8 months, you're gonna have to pay out of your pocket. I hope I can get that money back, right? Hopefully I gave that money to my kids or my grandkids, and hopefully I did it in a way because I thought I was being smart. I thought I was being smart and trying to protect it from having to spend it all on my care. In a lot of cases, I find that when clients come to us, some people are trying to move money around. And listen, this is what we do. We help people protect assets, but there's the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. So in some cases, obviously, people are trying to, kind of figure out their own version of how to protect the money. They just don't do it the right way. And so in some of those cases, we might be able to get the money back because, it's still sitting in their daughter's bank account. Their daughter didn't need the money. They were just trying to give it to their daughter so that they can apply for Medicaid. But I'll tell you, in most cases, that's not the case. In most cases, people come to us, and if any money was gifted, the person that they gave it to needed it, right? They gave it to their granddaughter to help pay for school. You can't get it back. Their granddaughter can't pay them back. They gave it to their son or their daughter that was, maybe had some tough financial times and they needed some help. They're not able to get it back. And so these are tougher situations. And I'm not going to go further down the path than just letting you guys know that in those situations, let's say that I gave away $50,000 and I gave it to my kids or grandkids who needed the money and I cannot get it back. Really, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plead to the nursing home because, Medicaid will kick in 5 months, but they're not going to give any money to the nursing home for those 5 months starting now. So I need to basically go to the nursing home and say, listen, Medicaid's not going to pay you. Are you able to let me stay here, even if all you're going to get is my income, right? My $2,000 from Social Security. So it's really pleading to the nursing home in these cases as to whether they will make it work for us. And knock on wood, I haven't had a client be in a situation like this in a long time. I can only probably think of one time in my practice in the last almost 12 years of doing this that's happened. And it was only a month or two, and the nursing home allowed them to stay. And I think we got really lucky because in a lot of cases, the more desirable nursing homes, if you will, and I think everybody should understand that there's no truly desirable nursing home. But the more desirable nursing homes are probably more likely to say, no, we're not going to allow this. And then, the options of where we can move and what nursing homes will allow that to happen, probably not the places that we would want to be in, or that we want our loved one to be in. So be really careful about the idea of just gifting money. And again, there are careful ways to do it. So I get that family members might have somebody that they want to help out, and I would never tell somebody not to help somebody. But unfortunately, older individuals need to be very careful. Unless they've got money, tons of money, they've got to be very careful about just giving money away, because it can really be, while they want to do something good for their kids or grandkids, they can really put themselves in a tough spot when it comes to needing to pay for their own care. If I'm married, okay, so if I'm a married individual, then the numbers look a lot very similar to what I just mentioned. So let's say that I'm the one going to the nursing home and my wife is not; she's staying at home. As far as what I just discussed, me being able to keep $2,000 in total assets, $30 of my income, 5-year look back period, all that still applies to me. Now, my wife, who's at home, there are different rules that apply to her. Okay. She can have $109,560. Okay, $109,560. She gets to keep $2,739 a month of her income. $2,739. Okay. Now, if her income is less than that, let's say that her income from Social Security is $1,500, I can take my excess income that I would have had to give the nursing home if I was a single person, and I can transfer that to her to get her up to the $2,739. Okay. Now, anything I have left that's over that, I have to give the nursing home. But again, if she's under that $2,739, I can transfer income to her to get her up to that. Okay, which is nice. In some cases, a married couple, their total income between the two of them might be $2,500. And so if I'm going in the nursing home and our total income as a household is $2,500, we're not going to have to give anything to the nursing home. My wife will be able to keep all of the income. Okay. So in some situations, it doesn't change the couple's financial position on a monthly basis anyway, at all. Now, in some cases it does, right? What if we've got a really nice pension? One of us has a really nice pension. Now, it's a little bit different. I don't want to get too crazy here, but let's say that, my wife, let's say that my income is $3,000 a month. Well, I already gave you that example. Okay, if my income is $4,000 a month, and my wife's is $1,000, I can keep my $30. I can pay for my Medicare supplement, and then I can give her $1,739 of my income, and then the rest of my income goes to the nursing home. Now, if that was flipped, if my wife's income was $4,000 and mine was $1,000, I'm not going to be able to transfer any of my income to my wife. My excess income will go to the nursing home like I'm a single person, but my wife will get to keep the lion's share of that $4,000. It's not like she has to give everything up to the nursing home and she can only keep $2,739. Technically, that $2,739 is a minimum. Just works out differently depending on who has the higher income. So if my wife's income is $4,000, she'll get to keep the $2,739 for sure. But then there's like a table, I think it's like for every $100 that she's over that number, she has to give $5 to the nursing home. Okay, so you can kind of look at 5% of what she has over the $2,739, she would have to contribute that to the nursing home in addition to what I'm contributing from my income. Hope that makes sense. We don't see that a ton. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've been doing this for almost 12 years now. It has not happened that often, crazy enough. One thing I will mention is that starting on January 1st of 2023, that $2,739 number, as far as the income for what we call the community spouse, the spouse that's living at home, it's gonna jump from $2,739 to $3,365. I think it's $3,365. I got to look at my notes. But that starts on January 1st, which is great. It's an extra almost $650 a month. And I can tell you that it's been at $2,739 for the last 12 years that I've been doing this. So the fact that it's jumping up by almost 25%, if you think about it, it's a big jump. It's a big jump, and it'll be pretty significant for some people. An extra $600 a month is $7,200 a year. It's a lot of extra income for somebody to help, allow them to continue to live their life, the spouse to continue to live their life in their home, whatever their home is. And then the 5-year look back. So the 5-year look back still applies to my spouse. Okay. The 5-year look back applies to both of us. They look at all of our assets and what we did over the last 5 years. So it doesn't matter if my wife gave away money out of her own bank account that I'm not on. It does not matter. Okay, they look at us together. One thing I think I for sure forgot to mention is I mentioned that my wife can have $109,560 in assets, right? I can have $2,000 in my name. She can have $109,560. She can also have, I didn't mention this, she can also have a house and a car. Okay, so she can have $109,560 in her name, plus a house, plus a car. There's no max value of the house, right? She can have a house that's worth $250,000. She can have a $1 million home. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. I'd say the majority of people I work with that are applying for Medicaid, typically we're not looking at houses that are $700,000 or more. Doesn't mean they don't exist, right? I've got clients that live on the North Shore who bought houses 50 years ago for $10,000 or $20,000 and are now worth $700,000, $800,000, but they're living month to month from an income and standpoint, and not having a whole lot of money in the bank. So those situations do occur where somebody has a really expensive home and they might still need to apply for Medicaid. It's just not, again, not as common that we'll see that. All right, so when we look at protecting assets, there are two situations where we can protect assets. One is where I look at it like a pre-planning standpoint, right? So this would be a couple that comes to us and, maybe it can be any age group. I mean, this might be a couple in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and healthy. And the idea is, sort of like, hey, Matt, we're concerned that if one of us ends up needing long-term care in a nursing home for a significant period of time, we both agree we don't want to impoverish our spouse, right? I don't want to impoverish my wife. She doesn't want to impoverish me. What can we do to protect our assets? So, and again, when we talk about protecting assets, to go back to the 5-year look back for Medicaid, Medicaid's going to look back 5 years. So if we're going to try to protect anything, we have to do it at least, or with the idea that we think we have at least 5 years before we'd ever have to apply for Medicaid. Okay. And again, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if that's going to happen. I would say that most of us would probably agree that if we're looking to do this planning in our 50s, 60s, maybe even early 70s, the likelihood of having 5 years on our side is a lot stronger than, even when we get to like late 70s, early 80s. Right. That's where, again, it just becomes, there are very, very healthy 70-year-olds. I'm not saying everybody that's in their 70s is not. I mean, it's the opposite, right? Most folks are healthy in their 70s and even early 80s. So there's a difference in a client coming to us looking to do some pre-planning that's in their late 70s, early 80s, very healthy, versus someone that's already got a diagnosis of dementia, or one spouse already has just got a diagnosis of dementia. It's early enough, they still have capacity, they can still do planning. The doctors are signing off on letters, which we always require in our office if there's any kind of cognitive impairment and that's been diagnosed. We'll always require a doctor's letter saying that this person still has the capacity to execute documents. So we can still do the planning technically, but again, if somebody's got that diagnosis, how long are they going to be able to stay at home before they might need either care in the home, right? How long are they going to be able to stay at home in their current situation with just, their spouse? And then when is it going to come time that they might need to pay a caregiver in the home? When is it going to come time that they might need to move out of the home into some sort of long-term care facility, whether it's memory care or skilled nursing? So again, we don't know, in certain situations, it might be very iffy whether we've got 5 years on our side or not. And so in these situations, what we will do is there's a certain type of trust we will use. And so there's different types of trusts out there. This talk would be way too long if I had to go into all the different types of trusts and kind of describe what trusts mean, but we use a certain type of trust. It's basically a legal document that says where we can move our assets, right? So I can create this MAT trust and I can retitle my checking account or my savings account or my brokerage account at Wells Fargo into this trust. And if I'm looking to protect assets, this type of trust that I'm creating is what we call an irrevocable trust. Okay. It cannot be changed. Once I put money or real estate in it, I cannot change it. Okay. Couple things. So if anybody on this that's paying attention, that's listening in or tuning in right now, has a trust, or maybe they have a loved one with a trust or something, the most common type of trust out there is a revocable trust. Okay, a revocable trust is what most people will use to avoid probate when they pass away, right? They want to make sure everything goes to their beneficiaries, but they want to avoid going through the court process. And with a revocable trust, if I'm creating one, I'm going to retitle my bank accounts, my real estate, etc. Basically everything typically other than retirement accounts, which cannot go into a trust. So I'm going to retitle all my accounts for the most part into this trust, and I'm what's called the trustee. So I can still deal with my house and deal with my, manage my bank accounts and write checks, and my life doesn't change at all. Okay, it's just that the titling on my accounts now says the Margolis Trust. It operates off my social security number, my taxes stay the same. I'm the beneficiary of the trust during my lifetime. Okay, easy. Trusts are very common now. But if I want to protect assets from Medicaid, then I'm using what I just mentioned, an irrevocable trust. Irrevocable trust. And the irrevocable trust, a couple things that are different than the revocable trust. I cannot make changes to it, right? Which I already mentioned. I can't make any changes. I cannot be the trustee. So now that I've put assets in there, bank accounts, a piece of real estate, my Wisconsin property, I don't have one, I'd love one, but my Wisconsin property, now that I've put all that stuff in the trust, I cannot be the trustee. I cannot be managing it anymore. So in most cases, we would have an adult child that would step in and be the trustee. Similarly, and really the third difference between this and a revocable trust is that with the irrevocable trust, I cannot be a lifetime beneficiary. Neither can my wife. Okay, so this applies to my wife and I. Doesn't matter if I'm the one going in the nursing home. Neither one of us can be a trustee, and neither one of us can be a lifetime beneficiary of the trust. What does that mean? That means that in most cases, when we set up these trusts, on its face, the trust looks like it's for the benefit of our kids from day one, not just for their benefit when we die, which is how most revocable trusts work. Most revocable trusts are going to be for my benefit or my wife and I's benefit during our lifetime. And when we die, then everything goes to our kids. But with an irrevocable trust, it still goes to our kids when we die, but during our lifetime, it's not even for our benefit. Okay. This means basically we want to show Medicaid, hey, we gave up our right to this money. And now listen, everybody, the big difference between using this trust and just giving our kids the money outright is the protection, right? The money's still there in this trust for us if we need it. So even though it can't come out to us directly, let's say my son's the trustee and my son and daughter are the lifetime beneficiaries. If my wife and I ever need money over time and we didn't keep enough money outside of this trust in our name still, because in every case where we're going to create this trust, we're not going to put every single dollar we have into it. We're going to put some money, right? We're going to say, okay, you know what, worst case scenario, we want to protect this chunk, but we're still going to keep money in our name because we need to spend money, okay? But let's just say the money that we kept in our name starts to dwindle over time and we need money from the trust. Well, then we go to our son, the trustee, and we say, hey, son, we need $5,000. And he distributes $5,000 from the trust to either himself or his sister, our daughter. And then he or she deposits it in their personal bank account. And then they turn around and they write us a check from their personal account for $5,000. Hey, mom and dad, we love you so much. Here's $5,000, right? And really all they've done is given us our own money back. Now, when we do this, we have to be conscious of tax consequences. And I'm not going to go into tons of detail on that. We don't have enough time, but just so everybody knows, a distribution from a trust, the trust to them is not taxable. It's not income, zero tax consequence. But when they turn around and give it to us, it's a gift. We just have to be conscious of how much they're gifting us on an annual basis. You know, we each have the ability to give $16,000 a year to everybody we know. Okay. We don't have to report it to the IRS, and it doesn't come off of our $4 million lifetime exemption. So if I've got two kids and there's my wife and I, each one of our two kids can give each one of us $16,000 a year. So technically we could have them give us $64,000 over the course of the year, and no tax returns or nothing would have to be filed. No expenses, no nothing. Excuse me. Well, that made sense, right? Our son can give me 16,000. He can give my wife 16,000. Our daughter could give me 16,000 and give my wife 16,000. So this is how this trust works. And I know I'm kind of going a little fast. I want to stop at about 10:10, maybe leave a couple minutes for questions. Basically what I want to give you the gist of is that there is a way to protect assets ahead of time. Okay. Now, a lot of folks come to us and they're not proactive. And I don't blame people, right? Most of us just don't think about these situations. And in some cases, we've got clients that have come to us where, their spouse had a stroke in their late 50s, early 60s, early 70s. They weren't expecting, they were healthy. They weren't expecting this medical event to occur. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, my husband or my wife's going to need to be in a nursing home. And, we've got, $400,000 in a house. And, let's just say I'm the spouse, I'm 70. I might have 20, 25 years left. Right. If we spend all of our money down, right, I know I get to keep $100,000, 109,560 to be exact, right? But let's just say 100 to make it easy. I know I can keep $100,000 in my house and a car, but we've got $400,000. We're going to have to spend $300,000 on his care before we can apply for Medicaid. So there are ways that we can protect assets at the last minute. Okay. And I'm gonna do my best to explain this in a way that makes it really easy to understand, which sometimes can be difficult, but hopefully you guys can follow me. So let's say this is a situation, right? We didn't have 5 years on our side. Okay. And there's no middle ground, guys, just so you know. We're either going to protect assets 5 years plus in advance, or we're going to protect assets on the doorsteps of applying for Medicaid. There's no middle. All right. So in some situations, somebody will come to us and we mentioned the 5-year look back period, and we're already in a situation where we know we don't have 5 years. There's just no way. And so we just say, listen, we got to just wait. Unfortunately, we got to wait until you get to a point where your husband's ready to move into the nursing home, and then we can get this plan in place. And so what that plan looks like is, let's just use the numbers I just gave, right? Let's say it's a married couple. They've got $400,000, a house and a car. All right. So we know, right now, you guys all know that if we do nothing at all, the spouse at home, we'll just say the wife's at home. I always pick on the guy. So the wife at home, after they spend down $300,000 over time, right? Not immediately. It's not like they're giving the nursing home a check for $300,000, but over time, they're going to spend that $300,000. And then let's say that's 2.5, 3, 4 years down the road. At that point, now the wife is down to her $109,000, husband's down to $2,000 in his name. Now they can apply for Medicaid, right? They just spent $300,000. So the wife comes to us, right? And these are the situations we see where the wife comes to us and says, obviously I want to make sure that my husband's cared for, but I want to make sure that we're not spending all of our money on his care. So what we can do is we take that trust that I just talked about, that irrevocable trust. We call it in our office, we call it a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. It's exactly what we're using it for. Okay. So we take that trust and let's just say in this situation, there's $300,000 at risk, right? Which there is. If they do nothing at all, they have to spend $300,000 before Medicaid would kick in. So there's $300,000 at risk. We're going to take roughly half of that and we're going to gift it to that irrevocable trust. And we're going to do that knowing that Medicaid is going to give us a penalty, right? And you remember from 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago, if we were to gift $150,000 within the 5-year period, which this is, it's literally right before we're applying for Medicaid. If we gift $150,000 and this nursing home costs $10,000 a month, we're creating a 15-month penalty, right? 150,000 divided by 10,000 a month, 15 months, 15-month penalty. Okay, so we know that we're gonna have to pay out of pocket for the next 15 months. But now remember, we had $300,000 at risk. We put 150 in the trust. We still have 150 that we need to get rid of because we need to be down to $2,000 in my name or $2,000 in the husband's name and 100,000 or 109,000 in the wife's name. So that other $150,000, we take that and we put it into a Medicaid compliant annuity. It's called a SPIA, a single premium immediate annuity. My short disclaimer here is that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an insurance salesman. I don't sell any financial products or insurance products. We don't as a firm. We get zero commission or kickbacks from these products. Okay, zero. And I say this because annuities to me are sold very improperly to older individuals. I've had clients come in over the years in their 80s being sold annuities where it made up 80% of their portfolio and they couldn't touch it without a surrender penalty for 7 or 8 years. Okay, horrendous. This is not that. This is not that annuity. This annuity is serving a very specific purpose. Okay, we're going to give the insurance company the $150,000 and it's going to go into this annuity. And this annuity is literally going to start paying us back immediately. Single premium immediate annuity. We're going to give them $150,000 and this annuity is literally going to make 15 equal monthly payments to us. So that coupled with our income, okay, so this tends to work out where, because we have income coming in, this tends to work out where in most cases we might put 60% of that 300,000 in the trust and 40% goes in the annuity, or 55-45. Either way, we'll just say 50-50 for now. So we give them 150,000 and they write me. Okay, now the annuity is not a gift because I'm just repurposing money that was an asset and turning it into an income stream. It's still in my name. It's still for my benefit. I didn't give anything away. This annuity is going to make 15 equal monthly payments to me. So that coupled with a portion of my wife and I's income, plus the annuity payment, we're going to pay the nursing home for those 15 months for the penalty that we strategically created when we gifted the money to the trust. After 15 months, the annuity's done. There's no money left in it. And whether the Medicaid application has been approved or not, it doesn't matter. After month 15, I'm considered Medicaid pending. If the application has not been approved, I'm considered Medicaid pending. If it's been approved, I'm on Medicaid. But in either case, it does not matter to me. It does not matter if it takes Medicaid another year to approve the application. After month 15, the only money that we're going to have to give the nursing home between my wife and I on a monthly basis is whatever portion of our income we have to give them based on what we discussed before, right? Depending on what my monthly income is and her monthly income is, right? And her getting to keep the $27.39 a month, me getting to keep $30 a month, you know, her $27.39 going up to $33.65 next year. So in some cases, again, between our income, if our income's low enough, based on what Medicaid allows my wife and I to keep, we might not have to give them anything. After month 15, we might not give them anything. We might only give them a couple $100. Okay, but in this example, and I hope it was clear, not only did my wife get to keep the house and $109,000 and her car, we had to keep an additional $150,000 we put in that trust. Okay. Again, I know it's sort of hard for me to go through some of these things in such a quick period of time. So I hope that made sense, everybody. Before I stop, because I'm really at the end of what I have to talk about, I want to leave a few minutes for questions here. But before I do that, the one thing I really want to mention that is inevitably, it's just as important as that Medicare, that inpatient status in the hospital piece in the beginning. Inevitably, we have clients that come to us that have private caregivers, right? And I get it. They hire a private person, they're paying them $20 an hour, not so much under the table, they're just paying them privately, right? They're not going through an agency. And I get it. A lot of agencies now, you're looking at $30 to $35 an hour for a caregiver. Whereas you might be able to pay somebody privately, you know, somebody that took care of your aunt or your uncle or your best friend's mom or whatever, and maybe you're paying them $18 an hour or $20 an hour. So I get it. But if you're going to pay that private caregiver, or you're going to pay that adult son or daughter to be your caregiver, or you're going to pay your grandchild to be your caregiver, it doesn't matter if it's a family member, you need to have a written contract in place. You need a written contract in place. If you do not have a written contract and you are just paying a private caregiver, I can tell you right now, if and when you apply for Medicaid, Medicaid's the first thing they're going to say is that that money was gifted to Linda, who you're claiming was a caregiver. And it will be an uphill battle to prove that it was not a gift. You can't put a caregiver contract together and have it be retroactive. You cannot have a caregiver sign something saying, I hereby swear that I was paid $15 an hour for the last 3 years, typically, you know, 10 hours, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Can't do that. So if any of you have a caregiver in place, or you have loved ones, or you have any friends that are in these situations, that doesn't mean they're not going to, you know, don't put a retroactive contract together, but put one together now. We can help with this. Go to another elder law attorney. I don't care, but do it. Okay, get that written contract in place. If nothing else, it'll show all the care moving forward. And then if and when Medicaid is applied for, you can always say, hey, listen, we had a private caregiver. We didn't realize we needed a contract. We talked to an elder law attorney. That's when we did put the contract in place. Put 2 and 2 together, and hopefully the state will take that and say, oh, Got it. This all makes sense. Not saying they will. In some cases, the state can be very, very difficult. Okay. But again, I mentioned this because this is a huge issue. We see this very often, and can be very difficult. In a lot of cases, people have not been able to fight it. Typically, what we'll do is after the fact, if obviously this has occurred and we come in after, and we're helping with the Medicaid application, it makes for a very tough Medicaid application where, we're having to get caregivers to sign affidavits saying that they are in fact a caregiver. They weren't just gifted this money. And if you've got a caregiver that whose citizenship status is not maybe what it should be, I can tell you that they'll be very uncomfortable to sign an affidavit, even though it's not like Medicaid's going to contact ICE or there's going to be anything like that. Or some people are very concerned about signing an affidavit because they just kept the money, they didn't pay taxes on it. And again, Medicaid's not going to go. The state of Illinois is not going to go tell the IRS. But these are just reasons why trying to get a caregiver to sign an affidavit after the fact will be very hard. Okay. So, all right, that is all I got. I'm looking at a question that Pam sent to me. How does I'm going to say, even though you wrote Medicare, Pam, I think it's how does Medicaid look at an irrevocable trust opened within the 5-year look back? So I think I mentioned that, but if I open up an irrevocable trust in the last 5 years, so let's say I'm thinking that this question was like, let's say I put money in an irrevocable trust and I have to apply for Medicaid prior to getting to the 5-year period. I mean, if that's the case, any money I put in there is going to be looked at as a gift or a transfer for less than fair market value, and it's going to count against me. So typically, what we'll do in those situations, because I'll have some clients that will say, "Listen, we know it's going to be very iffy whether we can make it 5 years or not, but we want to try." And so let's just say we put $200,000 in the trust. But let's just say that after 3 years they move into the husband moves into the nursing home. Moving into the nursing home does not equate with applying for Medicaid right away. Right, because he might move into the nursing home, but they might still have $200,000 or $300,000 in their name. Remember, in every case where we create this irrevocable trust, and from a pre-planning standpoint, we're not putting all the assets in there. We want to keep enough money in their name, ideally, so that they can make it through the next 5 years. Now, in some cases, even though we think they had enough money to make it through 5 years, they didn't have enough money to make it through 5 years if all of a sudden one of them needed care at $6,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 a month, 2.5 years in. So if that's the case, I typically recommend that people reach out back to the attorney they worked with, because there might be a way we might say, listen, you know what, we're going to sort of blow up this trust and we're going to distribute all the money to the kids, have them give it back to you, and then we're going to put kind of like that crisis plan together, which I just discussed at the end here, where we say, okay, now we're going to deal with this like it's a crisis. And we're going to put half in the trust and then half into that annuity and do that planning. Okay. So great question. It does happen. And it's just one of those things where it's time to regroup, right? If we've put money in that irrevocable trust and we have not made it to 5 years, and we think that we're going to need to apply for Medicaid soon, let's go back to the lawyer, or let's go to an elder law attorney if we really weren't working with one in the first place, and let's see what our options are. Good question.
Any other questions? Oops.
Yeah, so Gail made a comment just now in the chat box. Yeah, so and I mean, my only comment to that, Gail, is every family is different. Every family is different. So some families are there's two situations that we see. And I think this is the last thing I can discuss, and we're gonna have to sign off because we're getting kind of at the 10:15 hour here. But it's a great comment, Gail, because there's some clients that come to me and it's a situation like your mom's where, clients come to me and they're like, hey, mom ran out of money. She's living month to month on her Social Security, right? She's got like $4,000 in the bank and we're helping subsidize her care. Listen, if a family wants to do that, I'm not saying that I would advise against that. So I don't know, I'm not, again, the specifics are different. So I'm not saying that whoever advised against it was wrong with that advice. There's some other details that I would really need, whether I'm saying that I would agree or disagree with that advice or not. But in some situations, in some situations, listen, if the kids want to subsidize the care for their mom or dad, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because maybe they're willing to subsidize between them so that they can keep mom at home with a caregiver. Or maybe mom's doing okay with just assisted living and it's costing $4,000 a month. Or maybe the kids just have enough money where they're willing to support mom in a nursing home and help pay her $10,000 a month bill. Every family's different, right? Some kids are just, they have enough money, right? They have a big enough heart and they have enough money that they can take care of their parents. Okay. So I would never fault them for that. Never. Now there are other situations where I do advise against, and that's situations where people will come to me and, it's like, my mom has $100,000 in the bank. And, she's so concerned about her money that my brother, my sister, my siblings and I are helping pay for her caregivers or helping pay for her assisted living. That I don't like, because what they're doing is they're prolonging they're prolonging the situation where Medicaid could come in and help pay for their mom or dad. Now, again, so I would much rather them have their mom's money be used first, and then when it runs down, sort of like Gail's comment, then when it runs down, they can decide, do we want to help pay for mom now that her own money has run down? Or are we looking at places that take Medicaid? So that's typically where I'm coming from. I'm typically coming from, hey, mom or dad's money gets spent first. And then only if and when they get to a point where they need help, then the kid should decide, okay, should we start chipping in or not? But as long as mom and dad have the money to pay for their expenses, their money should always be used first. Okay. So Gail, I don't fault you guys for doing what you did. Again, I don't know the circumstances and the specifics, but listen, very kind of you guys to do that for your parents. Not every adult child is willing to do that, even if they have the resources, to be honest. But I think that's it. It's like 10:16. I know we got normally until 10:15. So I will end. Thank you guys very much for making today work. And I know there's some technical difficulties, so I appreciate you sticking it out. I'll let Pam take us home.
Yep. And stay on the line. Other people, I'll put Matt's contact information in there. Bye, Matt. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Great job.
And then just stay on there and I will shoot his email to everyone. Just give me a second to get it. It's Matt at Matt Margolis. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Come on. It's Matt at MARGOLIS Weldon.com. Hold on, I'm coming back. Oh, Matt, you can go away. One's still on there. Okay, chat. Matt, you can go away. You're okay. Okay, I got asked for Matt's contact information, so I just put it in the box there for everyone. That's correct, right, Matt? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming today. Our next talk is tomorrow at noon about Alzheimer's. So I look forward to talking to everyone there. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank
Very
you.
helpful.
Thanks for
Very good
putting
stuff.
up with
Very
all the
good.
technical stuff.
No problem. Very good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.